เอาละครับและในช่วงเวลานี้นะครับวันนี้เราได้รับเกียรติจากโมเดเลเตอร์นะครับถึง2ท่านด้วยกันนะฮะผมขอนำทุกท่านเข้าสู่การสัมมนาเชิงธุรกิจ EO Pro League เอพิโซด1 Matching and Dealing ในวันแรกนี้นะครับซึ่งได้รับเกียรติจากโมเดเลเตอร์อย่างที่เป็นให้ทราบไปถึง2ท่านด้วยกัน1ท่านเป็นชาวไทยและอีก1ท่านเป็นชาวต่างประเทศนะครับเราจะได้เห็นมุมมองที่หลากหลายมากยิ่งขึ้นนะครับท่านแรกนั้นนะครับเป็น Founder of MBB Consulting Group นะครับ Mr. Matthias Teisibau และอีก1ท่านนะครับ Senior Consultant DMG Events คุณสานิตการุญยวณิชแต่ก่อนอื่นเลยขอต้อนรับด้านบนเวทีนะครับสำหรับ Moderator ท่านแรก so would like to welcome to the stage the first moderator welcome Mr. Matthias Teisibau Founder of MBB Consulting Group
Thank you very much, and now we can start. Thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here. For you, just a confusion about my name. I want to clarify right at the start. My real name is actually Matthias, or that at least the name that is in my passport, but everybody calls me Teisi. I worked 13 years for Reed Exhibitions, and I think at Reed Exhibitions nobody knew that my real name is Matthias. Even when I went to school, most teachers didn't know that my real name is Matthias. Only my father called me Matthias, everybody else called me Teisi, and my father called me Matthias when he was angry with me. So when you are angry with me, you can call me Matthias, and when you are happy with me, then please call me Teisi. Before I go to the next slide, I also want to say that a big thank you to TSAP that I can be here on stage. I work in the exhibition industry now since, I don't know, I can't remember, a long time. And I really can't remember that a country went through this effort to put such a program together. I think it's really amazing that we are here together and that we can have 2 good days full of content and hopefully full of discussions as well. Very quickly, to my history, I only worked in the exhibition industry. So when it comes to the exhibition industry, please ask me questions. When it comes to anything else in life, don't ask me because I will not know the answer. I started at Messe Frankfurt. From my accent, you might have gathered that I'm actually German, but then I moved very quickly to Reed Exhibitions. I stayed there for nearly 13 years and moved to London in 2006. First as Global E-Business Director and then Director Business Development, actually doing a lot of business development in Asia, in China, but also here in Thailand. Then I worked for a couple of years as Portfolio Director for the Food Ingredients portfolio at UBM. One of my best shows was here in Thailand. The show is still here in Thailand. Very proud of it. And since 2015, I run my own consulting company, MBB Consulting Group. We have also, I want to introduce Zanit at this. The good news, and you might be surprised about it, when you have any question, you can ask me in Thai if you want. The bad news is you will not get an answer because I don't understand Thai. So for that reason, we have Zanit. He is, for the next 2 days, my better half. Can I call you my better half? Is that okay? He will always jump in when I underperform on stage. He will jump in when you want to ask something in Thai. And also when Zanit has a feeling something I explained was not clear enough, he's always happy to translate this to Thai as well. And the program without Zanit would not be possible. It was an absolutely great teamwork in the last months to bring all these slides together. So thank you for that, Zanit. My company, MBB Consulting Group, only 2 slides. We do consulting and we do education. And what we do today is education. We are also, I think, Kelly, you mentioned it, we are the education partner from UFI. We are running the UFI EMS course together with UFI. So UFI and my company is running it. And I think not everybody will be here tomorrow. Kelly explained the UCP program with the 16 points. If you miss some of the points because you can't be here tomorrow, we will take care of it. So we will offer a course from MBB that you can fill up these points. And we run the Exhibition Think Tank Club, but I will not explain it too much. From our consulting topics, we do a lot of strategy consulting, business recovery, commercial change management, due diligence, and digital transformation. We work for companies like Informa, Deutsche Messe, Comexposium, and many, many more. But enough from that, let's go to the agenda. And that is always the very, very scary slide at the beginning, because here you see a little green file and you say, oh my God, it's just at the beginning. And you will see that this file this arrow will move down when we go through the agenda. What you see on the agenda has a lot to do with partnership. The first session will be about partnership models. Then we talk about the journey, how to prepare a partnership. What is a journey? What is a prep work? We talk about structure and framework, and then we will end the day today with a small workshop, with a little workshop where you can discuss at the group what you have learned and how it could apply to your company. And then tomorrow we talk about commercial due diligence, tax questions, detailed legal aspects, and specific Thai aspects. And for the last three topics, I will step down as a moderator, and we have three lawyers from the company Luther, who is a Thai office helping at the moment international organizers to come to Thailand. The program is designed to be ready for international partnerships, to maybe reflect on what to do to move into a partnership, what could be the mistakes that are coming along in the whole journey to become a partner, maybe what to do when a partnership doesn't turn out as you want, but most importantly, how to make it a success and how to make good business out of it. From my presentation style, I said I worked 20 years in the industry. We have a lot of skills here in the room, which means we have a lot of experience here in the room. We have a lot of opinions here in the room. So please feel free when you don't understand something, when you maybe disagree with me, when you maybe have a similar experience, to jump in and ask your questions. I'm always happy to move into a little side discussion and discuss a point. I think an interaction is always better than a presentation. So please feel free to interrupt me. When you want to interrupt me, I don't recognize it, then Zanit will interrupt me. Yeah? But don't be shy, always happy to discuss a point and discuss different opinions. That's actually a great thing. So, okay, let's start with the first partnership model. What we try to do in this model, that we really talk a little bit about the different partnership models. We will show you which models do exist, maybe also how to evaluate the different models, how to judge which model might be the right for you, and how to start with which model. We want to show you also what is a business partnership model and what could be good starting points for you to start partnerships with international companies. We have always three people who play a role in each session. Me, you know, by the way, this is the only picture from me that looks half good. Yeah, so this is why it's 5 years ago. This is why I use this picture. Zanit, our master of ceremony. I also introduced Zanit as my better half, and then we always have a guest speaker, and the guest speaker brings the topic to life through his or her personal experience. In the session today, we have Nino here. Nino will talk about partnerships model in the third module, and Nino will be again a guest speaker in another session today about structures, which comes just after the lunch break. And then we have other speakers like Kevin, Pusit, Panada, Fabian, who is not here, who will come, and many, many more. So we hope it's a variety, and the concept is really to bring you different perspectives to life. And these are the three modules. The first module is always an introduction, and this is how all sessions will work. We have an introduction, we have a deep dive on the topic, and then we have the case study from the guest speaker. And here we want to talk a little bit about what are the reasons which partnership models exist, and we start talking about KPIs. KPIs is a word you will hear more often in the next 2 days. So something very, very important. And then in the deep dive, we want to introduce each model a little bit more in detail and give you some guidance, hopefully, to reflect on what a right partnership model would be. So let's start with the buyer's point of view. In a partnership, there are always 2 points of views, right? Or a partnership has at least always 2 partners minimum, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. But in a normal partnership, you have a buyer and a seller when it goes into a joint venture, or you have an international partner or a local partner when it's a content partnership or a marketing partnership. So let's reflect a little bit about what could be the motivations or what could be the point of view first from the buyer side. Growth an existing subsidiary in that country. So let's say I'm an international company. I already have a show in that country. I have maybe a very small team, and I want to grow my team. It could be a motivation that my team is too small. I need to grow my office, my local office, so that the office is worth covering the administration costs, or it could be that this is a target reason. A second motivation could be choosing a desired region. And I remember when I worked for UBM, for example, a desired region of UBM was Southeast Asia, was exactly this region here: Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines. Why was this a desired region? There were strategic reasons behind it. It was one of the biggest growth areas in the world, a population of more than 250 million in the entire region, and the middle class was was growing a lot in these countries. So we said, this is a region we want to be. And we want to be, that was the second motivation, we want to be as food ingredients portfolio before our competition is in that region. So that 2 motivations made it really a desired region to get our footprint here and to be dominant before the competition is coming. What would an international organizer then maybe do if that is a motivation? He would like to acquire shows, he would like to launch shows, but in the best scenario, he would like to find a local partner. Because there is nothing better when you launch a show than local knowledge. You can't build up, when you have these motivations, you can't build up your knowledge from a headquarter office as quickly as when you can find people in the local region who bring this knowledge, who bring this connection to the market, and to know how to organize exhibitions. And there you can see how valuable, maybe very often the local partners are the junior partners, are the smaller partners, but they carry something and they offer something a headquarter never can have from the beginning, and that is knowledge, industry knowledge, country knowledge, cultural knowledge, and contacts. So that makes it very, very important. And this also is a third point, grown the own show portfolio through an acquisition in a specific region. What is the difference between a portfolio strategy and a world-leading show strategy? A world is very, very important difference. And when you look for your international partners, that is one thing you should look is, does my international partner has a portfolio strategy or a strategy for setting up world-leading shows? In a portfolio strategy, you will have a family of shows. And the show the partner acquires or partner with will be embedded in that family, which has other consequences to reporting, to rebooking, to selling, to marketing the portfolio. A world-leading strategy has more the strategy to do 2, maybe 3 shows worldwide, America, Europe, Asia, and to be big in that region. My food ingredients portfolio had 4 shows in that region that time: Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam. So what did we have? Portfolio strategy. If we would have a world-leading show strategy, we would only have one show in that region, and that would cover whole Asia. So this is how important it is when you are partnering with an international company that you try to have a look what is the motivation on the other side, because then you can see what can I offer the partner, depending on which strategy. Or maybe I'm the wrong partner if the international company has a world-leading show strategy and you know your show will never grow above 600 exhibitors or 800 exhibitors, you might know that you are not the right partner. And you might know that either you change the mind of your international partner or you don't need to waste your time because you know that the motivation on the other side is a different
I'll let you have a little bit of rest นะครับเมื่อกี้จุดที่คุณเทซี่พูดนะครับก็คือว่าในเรื่องของการที่เป็นผู้ซื้อนะฮะ strategy ของผู้ซื้อเนี่ยมันอาจจะมีอะไรบ้างผมขออนุญาต recap นิดนึงแล้วกันเพราะเมื่อกี้สำคัญนะครับอันแรกนี่ก็คือว่าในลักษณะที่ว่าบริษัทที่จะเข้ามาซื้อสมมติว่าบริษัท A แล้วกันนะครับอยู่จากอังกฤษนะฮะแล้วมีงานทั่วโลกแล้วก็มีบริษัทลูกอยู่ในเมืองไทยแต่บริษัทลูกในเมืองไทยเนี่ยอาจจะยังเล็กๆอยู่นะครับเขาก็ใช้วิธีเข้ามาซื้อหรือเข้ามาซื้องานนะครับของบริษัทอื่นในเมืองไทยแล้วก็ไปรวมกับบริษัทลูกที่มีอยู่แล้วทำให้กิจการของบริษัทลูกในเมืองไทยของเขาเนี่ยโตขึ้นนะฮะอันนี้ก็แบบหนึ่งนะครับอันที่2ก็คือว่าบริษัท A เนี่ยนะครับเล็งว่าโอ้เมืองไทยเนี่ยเป็นที่ดีมากเลยในการที่เขาจะเริ่มเข้ามาทำธุรกิจในภูมิภาคตะวันออกเอเชียตะวันออกเฉียงใต้นะครับนั่นก็คือเป็นสาเหตุที่ทำไมเขาถึงเข้ามาร่วมทุนกับในประเทศไทยนะครับเพื่อที่จะมาถึงตลาดประเทศไทยแล้วก็เซาท์อีสต์เอเชียด้วยนะครับอันที่3นะครับก็คือว่าในเรื่องของอุตสาหกรรมที่เขาสนใจนะครับซึ่งเมื่อกี้คุณเทซี่พูดนี่ก็มีหลักการที่น่าสนใจนะฮะอันหนึ่งก็คือเป็นลักษณะของการเพิ่มพอร์ตโฟลิโอสมมติว่าพอร์ตโฟลิโอของเขาคือด้านอาหารนะครับเขาก็จะมาเลือกเลยว่างานอาหารนะครับในแต่ละประเทศเนี่ยมีอะไรน่าสนใจบ้างแล้วเขาก็ซื้อเยอะเลยซื้อหลากหลายด้วยนะครับเพื่อให้มีอยู่ในหลายประเทศมากๆนะอันนั้นคือแบบโตแบบพอร์ตโฟลิโออีกแบบหนึ่งคือเป็น world leading นี่คือเขากล่าวว่าอย่างนี้เลยว่าเขาจะมีงานเนี่ยนะครับอยู่แค่สมมติ 3-4 งานหนึ่งที่อเมริกาเพื่อ cover ตลาดอเมริกางานหนึ่งที่ยุโรป cover ตลาดยุโรปงานหนึ่งที่เอเชียเพื่อcover ตลาดเอเชียนั่นคือลักษณะของ strategy ของการเป็น world leading นะครับ
Thank you very much. On this slide, still we are talking still about the view of the buyer, so very likely the view of the international partner. Some of the points are already covered. International establishment of global trade show family. By the way, it could have different companies could name it differently. In the world of UBM, it was a portfolio. In the world of Messe Munich, it's a cluster. In the world of other companies, it's a show family. So it can have different names, but we're always talking about the same thing. But it can be also different when, for example, Reed Exhibition is talking about a portfolio. They don't mean the same as when UBM talked about a portfolio. In Reed Exhibitions, it was a much looser connection between shows. Aluminium in Germany and Aluminium in China had the same name, had the same logo, but the processes were loosely connected between the shows. Reed was working on this for a long time. At UBM, they had very, very defined portfolio processes, from the budgeting process to the rebooking process to the marketing process to the branding process. So only if a company is talking about a portfolio strategy, it also can mean very, very different things. As better you are informed about this, as better you can go in an international partnership. Then financial return of investments. This you will find a lot with the English guys. I'm actually a hybrid model. I'm German, but I worked my entire life for English companies. I only worked 1 year for Messe Frankfurt. And the English companies, they are always after the return of investment. German companies said at my time, a show launch should be profitable after 3 years. English companies would not accept this. They said a show launch should be profitable after the first year. So here you know what you can expect. Tight financial requirements. And the last one I want to mention on that slide is counter competition. And counter competition works through finding the right partner with the association, for sure. You want to partner with the main association of the industry sector, but also find, and here we come to the value a local partner carries, find the right local partner before the competitor find it. And then you could launch shows only to counter the competition. I had a show in South America to talk about another example. My show was biannual. My competitor at this time was Informa, by the way. UBM, our biggest competitor, were Informa before they merged. And they launched their show into South America as well. So we annualized the show immediately, which went, by the way, against ROI. So here our motivation, our ROI shifted suddenly to this motivation, counter the competition. We didn't want to have an annual show, but we annualized our biannual show to counter the move from, at this point, the Informa show. Now these shows, by the way, belong to the same portfolio. So let's move a little bit. I still have 10 minutes for the introduction. Let's move a little bit to the seller point of view. The seller can have totally different motivations. The seller could maybe overcome a lack of growth. Why could the local partner struggle to to grow a show further? Because the connections are normally in the local country and maybe the surrounding companies. The big companies, Reed Exhibitions, they have an organization called ISG, International Sales Group. Started many, many years when I worked for Reed Exhibition from a great guy called Dan Londero. And that is a whole sales army that can sail practically in all important countries of that planet. This is something a local partner doesn't have. So maybe get access to this very powerful sales organization. Normally international organizers have to grow the show further or improve the existing show. What did we do in our portfolio? We did a content and feature strategy. What is one of the biggest trends in the industry is making shows innovative, improving shows. People are not coming to shows only for the trade show themselves. They want to have a good time when they jump. So we had a content and feature strategy. We invested a lot of money. We invested more money than every local organizer could have. We always rolled out the content and feature at the mother show. And when it worked, then we rolled it out in all our local shows as well. So that was something where the local team was benefiting from enormously. Maybe a motivation. I remember another example. I was consulting a show in England in the Midlands. Do you know where the Midlands are? It's where Robin Hood is coming from. So when you have seen a Robin Hood film, this is where the Midlands are. And it was a lovely team. It was a show in the agricultural sector, and they were sitting on the farm. And when I got the consulting job, I drove 150 miles, and I said, Jesus Christ, where am I? Because there were only farmhouses and cows, and I'm not joking, there were only farmhouses and cows. And I was sitting in the team, watching out, I saw all these cows, one Amazon warehouse in the middle of the field, and they were all lovely people. But the problem was, they organized a show how you would organize a show 15 years ago. They did their best, but they never had an inspiration of what is the current trend, what do people expect at the moment. And this show was very close to falling over the cliff. They had an NPS score of -60. I never saw such a low NPS score with the show. And it came to the point, this is why they called me as a consultant, it came to the point that the 5 exhibitors called them and said, we will kill your show. We need a show. We need a show. But we don't want you to organize our show anymore. We kill your show, and then we go to another organizer, and we start the show again. You never want to come to this point. Before that, you want to partner with people who invest money in research and in content and features. And it took a big effort to bring this show back to life. I'm very proud the show still exists, but that was a typical example of an isolated team not having access to the latest trends in the industry. And then organization challenges, like small companies have small digital departments, have small sales departments, and so on. There, a big and international partner can bring.
Tracy, let me jump in a little bit.
Please.
ขออนุญาตนิดนึงนะครับในส่วนของฝั่งผู้ซื้อนะฮะเมื่อกี้ก็มีเรื่องที่น่าสนใจอีกอันหนึ่งก็คือว่าในแต่ละบริษัทเนี่ยอาจจะไม่เหมือนกันนะครับอย่างที่คุณเทซี่บอกนะฮะก็คือว่าถ้าเกิดว่าเป็นอย่างของ REIT นะครับแม้ว่าชื่อของงานเนี่ยจะเป็นชื่องานเดียวกันเลยนะครับงานอลูมิเนียมเนี่ยแต่ว่าวิธีการรันเนี่ยนะฮะในประเทศหนึ่งกับอีกประเทศหนึ่งเนี่ยคือคนละแบบเลยนะครับแค่ใช้แบรนดิ้งเดียวกันแต่ถ้าเกิดเป็นลักษณะของทางUBM หรือ Informa เนี่ยจะเป็นลักษณะที่ว่าใช้สตรัคเจอร์ของการบริหารนะครับการตลาดการขายการบัญชีอะไรทั้งหลายเนี่ยร่วมกันเลยแล้วคอนเทนต์ก็ค่อนข้างแชร์กันเยอะนะฮะนั้นจุดหนึ่งอีกอันนึงที่น่าสนใจมากก็คือในเรื่องของการที่จะorganizer ระดับโลกเนี่ยนะครับบางทีเขาก็คำนึงถึงเรื่องการแข่งขันนะครับการหา local partner เนี่ยบางทีแล้วเนี่ยคือเขาต้องการหา local partner ที่ดีได้ก่อนคู่แข่งนะครับเพราะเขารู้ว่าถ้าเกิดว่าคู่แข่งจะเข้ามาตลาดนี้เหมือนกันเนี่ยแต่สมมติไปอย่างมีงาน travel จะมานะครับใครๆก็คงจะวิ่งไปหาคุณกฤษก่อนใครที่จับมือคุณกฤษได้ก่อนก็คงจะได้เปรียบถูกไหมฮะอย่างนี้เป็นต้นนะครับนั่นคือในเรื่องของ competition นะครับหรือว่าในลักษณะที่ว่าเขารู้แล้วว่าจะมีงานคู่แข่งจะ move in เข้ามาเมืองไทยนะครับเขาก็ต้องรีบกระโดดเข้ามาก่อนแล้วก็ establish ก่อนนะครับหรือแม้แต่ว่าเขาอาจจะทำงานเนี่ยให้กลายเป็นทุกๆปีเลยด้วยซ้ำเพื่อที่จะกันคู่แข่งพูดง่ายๆนะในแง่ของผู้ขายบ้างนะครับผู้ขายเนี่ยนะฮะก็มีแน่นอนในเรื่องของอยากจะทำให้งานดีขึ้นนะครับเพราะบางทีเนาะเราอยู่เมืองไทยเราทำงานเองนะครับเราก็เหมือนกับมันก็ดีขึ้นทีละหน่อยนะฮะแต่ว่าในการที่จะได้พาร์ทเนอร์จากต่างประเทศเข้ามาเนี่ยแน่นอนมันจะได้ในสิ่งใหม่ๆเข้ามานะครับหรือว่าในเรื่องของวิธีการในการทำงานต่างๆนะครับแล้วก็ในการที่จะ grow ตัว business ต่อไป
I'm already running a little bit late, by the way, so I need to speed up. The seller point of view, I go through a little bit quicker through the next slide, might be retirement, might be financial, might be competitive circumstances that the local partner needs a strong international partner. And with a financial offer, that is an absolutely okay motivation, by the way, if you're a local organizer and you want to partner, you want to sell to an international organizer. But this is a motivation which will be in totally opposite to the motivation of the international company. Yeah, you want to have as much money as possible, they want to pay as little money as possible. So if you have this motivation, if this is why you're looking for a partner, just be prepared that your counterpart will discuss this very, very deeply. And we had a time before the pandemic when shows specifically in Asia said, I want to have factor 10 EBITDA, I want to have factor 12, which is very, very high. You need many, many years for your return of investment if you have to pay so much money. I, as a consultant, had many calls from the companies in England and Germany, said, can you talk to this show? But I don't want that they know that I am XYZ, that I'm the big organizer XYZ. Because I know exactly when they know who I am, they get dollar signs in their eyes. And this is theoretically not a good start for a partnership. Yeah? So it is sometimes these mechanisms are necessary, and sometimes you have motivations for good reasons, and you know your counterpart has exactly the other motivation. So be aware of this and address it very, very openly, that you say, I sell my show for the money that it's worth, not more and not less. It's a fair price, but I want to get what it's worth, so I have a fair conversation about it. Then, here I go through relatively quickly the different types of partnerships are company joint ventures and project joint ventures. So this is when shares go to the table, but there are other partnerships as well, like a content partnership, sales partnership, very, very important. Very, very hard to set up a good sales partnership. Sales agents is a chapter on its own. I could talk a whole day only about sales agents. When you are a sales agent in Thailand, I'm an international partner, and my sales agent in Thailand sells only 500 square meters, and I call him and said, come on, you can sell more than 500 square meters. What will my sales agents tell me? That's impossible. I did everything I could. They're absolutely not possible to sell more than 500 square meters. The same is the Italian sales agent, and so the international companies are often extremely frustrated about their sales agent because they are not sure, do I really get everything out of the country I could get out of the country? The good news is, if you go in a sales agent partnership, you could be better than the other sales agent. At Reed Exhibitions, I actually once established a system where I said to the sales agent, you don't get exclusivity about this country, because then I'm lost. Then you tell me forever, I don't get more out of the country. I do everything I can do. You get exclusivity over a part of my database, and you can choose the database yourself. So you can choose, I sell to this 100 records, and I say you have the exclusivity for this 100 records for 3 months, or for 4 months, or for 5 months. You can choose it yourself. But when you don't sell it, then you lose the exclusivity, and I have the choice to go to another sales agent in your country. So I put trust in you that you pick the cherries you want out of my pipeline, but if you don't perform, I can go to another. That was for sure my sales agent at this time. They were pretty upset with me when I introduced the system. At the end, it made the partnership stronger because we could discuss things. And then marketing partnership and operation partnership.
ครับก็อันนี้เป็นส่วนสำคัญนะฮะเมื่อกี้ก็มีคุณเทซี่ผุนผู้ขายนะฮะแน่นอนขายก็ต้องอยากได้ตังค์เนาะนะครับบางคนเรื่องสตังค์เป็นเรื่องสำคัญสุดนะฮะอันนั้นก็เป็นเรื่องที่ต้อง negotiate กันวิธีการคิดกันเขาเรียกมีสิ่งเรียกว่าตัวคูณหรือ multiplier นะครับง่ายๆคือเบสิกก็คือว่าอันนี้คือพูดถึงมูลค่าของบริษัทเลยนะฮะก็คือว่ากำไรการ projection ของกำไรของปีหน้าคูณด้วยเท่าไหร่นะครับซึ่งมันอาจจะในบางกรณีนะฮะงานฮอตมากๆหรือบริษัทฮอตมากๆหรือภูมิภาคนั้นฮอตมากๆเนี่ย multiplier เนี่ยอาจจะขึ้นไปถึง 10-12 นะครับแต่โดยทั่วๆไปนี่คือประมาณ 7-8 เท่านะครับของ projected profit EBITDA นะทีนี้มาถึงว่าในการที่จะเป็นพันธมิตรกันกับต่างชาติเนี่ยมันไม่จำเป็นจะต้องขายกิจการนะครับมันยังมีอีกหลายรูปแบบมากนะฮะที่น่าสนใจเช่นโอเคอันหนึ่งก็คือบริษัทร่วมทุนอันนั้นเรื่องใหญ่นะฮะหรือเขาเข้ามาซื้อเรานะครับอันนั้นเรื่องใหญ่ M&A นะแต่มันยังมีอีกหลายๆแบบเช่นร่วมกันจัดงานนะครับทั้ง2บริษัทต่างประเทศกับเมืองไทยนะฮะเก่งทางด้านนี้เรามาร่วมกันจัดงานใหม่ขึ้นมานะครับอันที่2คือพันธมิตรด้านเนื้อหานะฮะนั่นก็คือเพราะว่าในต่างประเทศเนี่ยเขามักจะมีอะไรที่ใหม่ๆมีคอนเซปต์มีอินโนเวชันมีโน่นนั่นนี่นะฮะส่วนทางเรามีอะไรเรามี local know how เรามี local connection กับสมาคมหรือหน่วยงานของรัฐอย่างนี้เป็นต้นเขาก็น้ำพึ่งเรือเสือพึ่งป่านะครับในเรื่องของอีกอันหนึ่งก็คือน่าสนใจก็คือการต่างคนต่างช่วยกันขายงานให้กันและกันเพราะไหนๆสมมติผมทำงานฟู้ดฝรั่งทำงานฟู้ดผมมีลูกค้าในเมืองไทยผมช่วยขายงานของเขาให้เขาก็ช่วยขายงานของผมให้นะครับอันนี้ก็อาจจะบางทีเนี่ยได้ result ได้ผลที่ดีกว่าการตั้งเซลล์เอเจนต์เพราะเซลล์เอเจนต์เราก็ไม่รู้ว่าเซลล์เอเจนต์มันทำงานให้เราแค่ไหนนะฮะเซลล์เอเจนต์ก็เหมือนเซลล์ขายรถชอบขายรถที่ขายโมเดลที่ขายง่ายๆอะไรที่ขายยากก็ช่างมันเถอะนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นแต่ถ้าเกิดเป็นพันธมิตรแลกกันนะครับอันนั้นเป็นสิ่งน่าสนใจโอเค
Then very quickly on the next 2-3 slides, the differences. It's company joint venture is maybe the strongest partnership. It's really 2 companies go into a joint venture and share their ownership of this company. What is a famous example in Thailand is Reed TradeX. Yeah, it's a joint venture between TradeX and Reed Exhibitions. Project joint venture is a partnership where 2 companies maybe decide to run a show together. DLG has a couple of those partnerships. Another example out of this region is Reed Exhibitions has Aquatherm. It's a show, and they gave a project joint venture with Messe Georgia, for example, or with other shows, where they said, we don't have an office in that country. We don't want to start an office in the country because we don't want to have an office with 5 to 10 people. So let's give it in a joint venture to another company. So still a share deal, but less strong than a company joint venture. Content partnership is when it could be with an association. I had a content partnership for the food show with the World Association of Professors. It was a pretty substantial partnership, a lot of money involved, but it was a world network from professors from that industry, from the food industry, including bodies like the European Union, and they generated very, very good content. But it can be also a very, very small partnership that a local social media agency, for example, is producing content only for that local market. Sales partnership, we already talked about it, that has a lot to do with sales agents, with companies who are offering sales services, cold calling. It could be also that a local company is doing the cold calling for the pipeline to nurture an exhibitor to 30, 40, 50%, and then their own team is taking over when the lead is becoming a hot lead, or marketing partnership and operation partnership, very important when a company wants to launch a show far away from their home market, far away from their mother market. And that was, we were actually in UBM. UBM Hong Kong launched a diamond show. They have a big diamond portfolio in Hong Kong, and they launched it in Germany. And actually, my office, UBM Amsterdam, became the operation partner for our colleagues. So that was an internal partnership, but as same as I think TSAP has a lot of connections to local companies, so there would then come into play for operation partnerships when a US company, for example, wants to launch a show in Germany. I think this is the last slide, and then I hand over. You see that there are many different motivations, and there are many different reasons to go in a partnership. Some can be really different. Sometimes I said your motivation or your reason might be actually the opposite of your partner's motivation, which is okay, you just need to be aware of. Sometimes you have exactly the same motivation, that you both are interested to grow the show further. Sometimes there are things involved with the family business is a local partner, the international partner is a big company, like Reed Exhibitions, which involves a lot, or like Informa, which involves a lot of other mechanisms to go from a family business or to partner from a family business with a global organizer. So there are a lot of processes to be aligned, a lot of decision-making processes to be aligned. In a family business, very often the founder, the head of the family, has the say. And in international companies, it goes through a decision-making process. So you already can imagine that there are potential clashes on the way, which need to be discussed, which need to be ironed out. And I'm surprised sometimes, or not sometimes, actually quite often, I'm surprised how two companies go in the partnership and never talked about their motivations before. And it's totally unclear why they go in a partnership. So ending this slide maybe is when you go, oh, was actually not the last slide, okay. When you go in a partnership, then, but I can go through this slide, think really, what is your motivation, why you go in a partnership, and what is the motivation and the value from your partner. You will very often not find out. You will very often not really know what the motivation is from the other side, because sometimes the other side can't tell you. But try to be as transparent as possible, and try, it puts you in a better negotiation position. Try to understand the partner. Why does he want me? Why does he not want my competitor? Why does he want to be in Thailand? Why does he not want to be in Indonesia? Why does he want a local partner? Why does he not open his own office? And so on. I think this I already said about the different motivations. And with this, Sanit.
I'll try to recap that. Rewind ครับ ก็ในเรื่องของการเริ่มต้นนะฮะในการที่จะเริ่มทำงานกับต่างประเทศนะฮะจะมีอีก2แบบนะครับที่น่าสนใจนะนั่นก็คือการทำด้าน operation ให้เขานะครับหลายๆครั้งเนี่ยนะฮะงานจากเมืองนอกมาถึงปุ๊บมาเมืองไทยเนี่ยเขาไม่มีออฟฟิศในเมืองไทยเขาไม่เคยดีลกับฮอลเขาไม่เคยดีลกับคอนแทรคเตอร์ไม่เคยดีลกับเฟรดในเมืองไทยนะครับเขานี้คนที่ทำด้าน operation ให้นั่นก็เป็นวิธีหนึ่งในการที่เราจะได้เริ่มทำงานกับต่างชาตินะฮะหรือในเรื่องของ marketing นะครับเขาไม่เคยท นะครับเราก็ทำร่วมกันอย่างนี้เป็นต้นนะฮะเสร็จแล้วเนี่ยก็คือเรื่องสำคัญก็คือว่าที่คุณเทซี่บอกก็คือว่าผู้ซื้อผู้ขายเนี่ยส่วนมากไม่ค่อยรู้หรอกว่าอีกฝั่งหนึ่งจริงๆต้องการอะไรโดยเฉพาะเราเป็นคนขายเนี่ยเราไม่ค่อยรู้หรอกว่าฝั่งฝรั่งเนี่ยเขามี motivation จริงๆคือเรื่องอะไรนะฮะมันอาจจะเป็นเรื่องของซื้อปุ๊บโอ้ตั้งแต่ปีแรกได้กำไรหรือเปล่านะฮะหรือว่าจะเป็นเรื่องของการที่จะมาขยายกิจการนะครับฝรั่งก็ไม่รู้หรอกว่าจริงๆเนี่ยเราอยากได้ตังค์เราอยากขายเฉยหรือว่าจริงๆแล้วเราอยากจะทำให้งานมันดีขึ้นนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยการแมทช์กันหรือว่าอาจจะเป็นว่าเราไม่อยากทำละจริงๆเราไม่อยากรันบิสเนสนี้ละเราอยากที่จะหาคนที่จะมาเทคไปนะครับทำให้มันต่อเนื่องแล้วเราก็ได้ตังค์ด้วยนะเพราะฉะนั้นในเรื่องของการที่จะพยายามเข้าใจเรื่อง motivation หรือความต้องการของทั้งสองฝ่ายเป็นเรื่องสำคัญมันจะทำให้เราเวลาทำดีลก็ทำได้ดีขึ้นเวลาทำงานด้วยกันเพื่อขยายงานก็ทำได้ดีขึ้น
Thank you very much. In the question and answer round, I would like to know if you have any question. But first, I would like to ask you, who of you, please raise your hand, who of you have ever been in a partnership with a non-Thai company?
ครับขอยกมือนะครับสำหรับคนที่เคยร่วมงานกับต่างประเทศบริษัทต่างชาติ
Okay. So quite a few on each table one. Who of you had the moment in this partnership, God damn it, this doesn't work how I imagined at the beginning?
มีใครแบบ
Panada, you need to think about it. Panada, can you share one moment without telling a secret for sure?
So actually, I would say all international partnerships went in a different way than we expected. One of the reasons is also, like Tessie said, that each party has like a hidden agenda behind. And then also during the way, there might also be a change of the management, the team working, and that's also affect the partnership as well, at least in my opinion. And also, of course, when I don't want to say much about management because my one former management just sit there, but management plays a very important role in the JV management, at least in my opinion. So that's what I want to say.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Panata. Thank you very much. I have another. Yeah, please applaud. Thank you. I have another question before we move on. Who of you think a partnership is a good thing?
ใครคิดว่าเป็นสิ่งดีบ้างครับในการที่จะควรจะพาร์ทเนอร์กับต่างชาติยกมือกันน้อยเนาะ
More or less all of you. Why? Any idea? Why do you think a partnership is a good thing with an international company? Can we have the mic?
So I think it's perhaps we can learn from the best practice from them, or we can get the knowledge or know-how from them from the international levels.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes the local organizer facing with some challenge without any solution, but perhaps their solution from the international partnerships can deal with that sometimes. But I have a little bit questions asked back about the practice that you partner with the international partner during the events. If they have some things perhaps might change during the way, it's gonna affect the contract, or did you sign a contract before the event happens? If anything's changed during the way, is there any problem, or you trade off with? You think about if you break the contract during the way, if the international partner doing something wrong, is possible?
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you very much. So first answer is yes, definitely you sign the contract before the event happens. It's very, very important. But there is also something I said later on a slide. The contract is very often done and phrased by the big company. The big company, they are very experienced with that. And the small company is sometimes overwhelmed with contract work because they are a small company. When you are a small company, read the contract, read every word. Not because a big company has bad meanings, but they write the contract in their interest. So you need to read the contract. One person I looked up early in my career said to me, it was a big guy in the German exhibition world. He said to me, Tesi, you need to read every contract that comes on your table. You need to read every word. So that is my advice to you. Even you feel overwhelmed with contract work, read it and find the middle ground between the two motivations. Then the contract is signed, the event happens, and that is the second part to your question. A contract is a definition of a partnership, nothing else. The partnership comes to life through the things that are not defined in the contract, through the extra mile you walk for your partnership, through the extra mile your partner walks for you. So things are happen, a contract is never perfect, and it's fine. You need to do strategy work, you need to change your show, you need to develop your show, you need to innovate your show. Life will change, and that can change. If the contract is well written, changes are totally fine. Maybe you come to the point where you say, we need to change the contract, marketing was my responsibility, I'm overwhelmed, can we change this little line? If it's a strong partnership, it will not be a problem. Yeah?
Let me jump in Thai a little bit ครับก็จริงๆในการเป็นจอยกับต่างประเทศนะฮะแน่นอนคนเขียนคนร่างสัญญาได้เปรียบเสมอคนร่างสัญญาได้เปรียบเสมอเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยนะฮะแล้วส่วนมากเราก็รู้สึกว่าฝั่งเนาะเขาทำมาเยอะแล้วเขามีสแตนดาร์ดโน่นนั่นนี่ให้เขาเป็นคนร่างก็ต้องเขียนเข้าข้างตัวเองเสมอนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นคุณเตซี่บอกว่าเราต้องดูสัญญาเนี่ยทุกข้ออย่างละเอียดและทำความเข้าใจเราถึงต้องมีรอยเยอร์นะฮะส่วนอีกอันหนึ่งแน่นอนเวลาทำกันไปนะมีทะเลาะกันแน่นอนเป็นเรื่องธรรมชาตินะครับอันนี้กระซิบไว้แบบฐานะคนไทยนะฮะ at the end of the day ใครถือตังค์ไว้ได้เปรียบนะฮะทะเลาะกันเนี่ยแต่สมมติถ้าเกิดฝั่งเราเนี่ยเราบอกรายได้ที่ขายในเมืองไทยเราเก็บไว้ในบัญชีเรานะก่อนที่เราจะreconcileตอนจบงานเราถึงจะมีเขาเรียกว่า leverage ในการต่อรองตอนจบนะครับเผื่อมีอะไรอันนี้คนไทยบอกกันไว้
Thank you very much. And I finished the question and answer round, but just I asked you the question, who of you thinks an international partnership is a good thing? And many of you raised the hand, an international partnership is the best thing. You really should look out for it. You only grow your business with strong partners. You only make your show more innovative, or even if it's not a show, your service with strong partners. It's like in real life, if you have good friends, if you're married to the right person, then you have a good life. So with all challenges on the way, with all what is my motivation, what is the other motivation, which partnership I go through this process, because an international partnership make the international partner stronger and make your business in Thailand stronger. So, and when you have a good partnership, it's a very rewarding thing. Okay, now we go to the deep dive, and the deep dive I try to go through in 12 minutes. The first thing I said earlier, we will talk a little bit about key performance indicators. Key performance indicators are things like the sales, maybe the sales by country, how many visitors coming to the show, rebooking per exhibitors, additional venue advertising, marketing expenses, and so on and so on. Big companies love key performance indicators. It's nothing else, you know what it is. It's how you measure your business, how you measure your show, how you measure your different activities. Partnerships with big companies often start going in the wrong direction if you don't have a post-show report, if you don't know how many exhibitors you have at your show. They will ask you tons and tons and tons and tons of questions. You had 500 exhibitors. How many sub-exhibitors? What is the average stand size? What is the revenue in the last 3 years? What is the contribution margin in the last 3 years? So when you are seeking and when you want to prepare yourself for international partnerships, think in the thoughts of your partner. Get prepared, get your figures, get your ducks in the row, an English person would say. Get your figures in the row, because then you not only find a partner, you also put your business on an international standard, on how NPS score is another one. What is the satisfaction rate of the show? So look in your own history and say, would I have the KPIs? Would I be a good partner? You're not only a good partner because you have a good business or a good show, you can prove that you have a good business or a good show, and that you can prove through the KPIs. Very, very important. Proper post-show report, I just mentioned it. Go very deep with this. Small companies often don't have the right skills to write post-show reports, or the post-show report is written by the show director. What is more annoying when you just delivered a very successful show and then you need to write a 20 pages post-show report? I already can say that these reports will not very good. So you need the skills and you need a responsibility in your company to write these reports. Think about the values, and I put some example values of a post-show report here. For example, split of exhibitors, 80% local, 20% international. It is different from industry to industry. It's different from show to show. It is different if you have a distribution market or if you have an upselling market, and so on. But these are the KPIs your partner will look at and will say, does that feel right or does that feel wrong? Minimum 2,000 square meters. When we launched shows, we said we don't launch below 1,000 square meters. That is absolutely minimum for a launch show, and it must be profitable in the first year. When somebody wants to acquire a show, 2,000 is already pretty low, so it should be higher than 2,000 square meters. A history of minimum 5 years. So these are typical measures you can find out through a post-show report, and they have departments. At Reed Exhibitions, I was actually sitting in the room. They're all retired, but these were people like Nick Foster, John Gallagher, Howard Klein, Geoffrey Bush. All what they did was looking at these figures and say, is this a partner? So when you go to the journey, get your ducks in the row and write good post-show reports. Go step by step. That is another thing. Sometimes partnerships start very enthusiastically, but partnerships are always, or long-lasting partnerships, there is an old say, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk with your partner. Sometimes when we go into partnerships, we want to walk fast. We want to prove that we are enthusiastic. We are really business people. We want to walk fast. Sometimes it's better to walk not so fast, but to walk with your partner. Who of you knows an old Walt Disney film from the 50s? Any Walt Disney film from the 50s? Any idea? Or do you know any Walt Disney film from the 50s? Really? Are they not popular in Thailand? Cinderella is one. Another one, Snow White. Have you heard about Snow White, the film? What is the princess doing when she's riding through the forest? She's singing a song. She said, I love the birds, I love the trees. What happens next? The prince is coming on a horse. The horse is white. He's also singing a song. I love the birds, I love the trees. Their boss meet, and what do? Oh, you're a prince, I love you, I want to marry you. This is not how a partnership works. Yeah? A partnership takes much, much longer time. So when you find the prince on the white horse, don't say too quickly, I want to marry you. Go through the process step by step. Maybe start with a sales partnership first. Maybe don't go right to the project, joint venture, or to the acquisition. Take the time to know your partner. I'm a small consultancy. When a consulting partner, I have consulting partner in my company, the straight thing I do is before I take you as a consulting partner in my company, we need to run 3 projects together. Because I want to know that we can work together, that the working culture is fitting.
Okay, let me jump in a bit.ครับ
Please.
มีจุดสำคัญนะฮะก็คือเรื่องของ KPI นะครับในการที่ฝรั่งเนี่ยสมมติว่าบางทีเขาอาจจะเคยมาดูงานสมมติว่าเขาเริ่มสนใจงานเราเขาอาจจะเคยมาดูงานเราสักครั้งเดียวนะฮะเพราะฉะนั้นนี่เขาต้องการดู history เพราะฉะนั้นสิ่งที่เขาต้องดูคือ KPI ส่วนมากคือ backtrack ไป 3-5 ปีนะครับปัญหาของคนไทยคืออะไรไหมฮะเราทำ post show report กันไม่ค่อยเป็น ไม่ค่อยละเอียดนะครับ post show report ที่ดีมันควรจะต้องมีใช่ไหมจำนวนคนที่มาต่างประเทศเท่าไหร่ decision making หรือไม่แล้วก็ square meter ต่างๆนะครับอีกอันหนึ่งที่สำคัญก็คือว่าของเราเนี่ยเรามักจะสตอนะฮะเราจะ strawberry ในเรื่องของ post show report นะครับซึ่งมันดีสำหรับในการที่เราจะขายงานปีหน้านะครับกับลูกค้าแต่มันไม่ดีเลยนะฮะสำหรับการที่เราจะพาร์ทเนอร์กับใครเพราะว่าเขาไม่โง่เนาะเขาแค่ดูบัญชีเราอ่ะเขาก็รู้แล้วเราสตอว่าเรามี exhibitor อยู่500 รายนะฮะตัวเลขมันออกมาดูบัญชียังไงอยู่ว่าขายได้ไม่เกิน250นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยถ้าเกิดว่าคิดจะเริ่มทำงานกับต่างประเทศเนี่ยเราจะต้องจัดนะครับบัญชีจัดตัว post show report อะไรต่างๆเนี่ยให้เป็นความจริงนะครับไม่อย่างนั้นเนี่ยมันฟ้องแล้วเขาก็จะเริ่มไม่ trust เราเนาะมันก็เป็นเรื่องธรรมชาตินะครับเพราะฉะนั้นตัว KPI หรือว่าในเรื่องบางเรื่องเนี่ยนะฮะเราต้องจดจำไว้ให้ดีเช่นเรื่องของ rebooking นะครับงานปีนี้เรา rebooking exhibitor เดิมได้กี่เปอร์เซ็นต์นะครับถึง 40-50% ไหมถ้าเกิดได้ขนาดนั้นก็เยี่ยมเลยนะครับอย่างนี้เป็นต้นโอเค
Thank you very much. The one thing here, this is following up actually on one thing I explained before, that we have different drivers, that we have different motivations. Another good reason to go with a smaller partnership first is in smaller partnerships you have less motivations and you have less drivers. So it's easier to find common ground when you start small and then grow your partnership over time, maybe to the point that you really can do a project joint venture. When you want to go globally, that is actually, I think that is a motivation where both sides meet each other very well. You want to become more global and your partner want to become more global. Come up with a good strategy, how you can become a player. But if you join with your show or with your product or with your service a portfolio, a show of portfolio, you will be embedded in many processes you are not had before, in a budgeting process, in a rebooking process. Maybe you need to change the logo of your show because it needs to fit the branding of the portfolio and so on. So very common motivation, but a lot of change for the local partner. And then here on the next two slides, simply a couple of things when you think, okay, what is the right model for me? What is the right model for seller and buyer? Clarify your targets. The buyer and the seller may identify their targets for partnerships and future acquisitions. Do you want a joint venture? Do you want an acquisition? Or are the buyer objective legally possible via the foreign or local investment? Sometimes the local country simply offers for me. When you go to Qatar, for example, you can't open a company as a European in Qatar. You always need to find a local partner who starts a company on your behalf. So you're always connected to a Qatari when you do this. Foreign shareholder possible. Does the investor want to acquire majority share? If possible, very often they will. We had at REIT exhibitions, we had the policy we acquire minimum 51%. Minimum 51%. That makes you automatically the minority shareholder. You will find this with the big companies very, very often. You still have a blocking minority above 25%. It's a blocking minority due to English law. Another reason to look in the contract, is a contract written after the English law, is a contract written after the Thai law. So be aware about your strengths and weaknesses when you go into a minority shareholder deal. Maybe it's worth giving up because you're accessing a global sales organization, but look at this. Is a seller interested to continue working after the company? That's a very important question you need to ask yourself, specifically for family-driven businesses. I had once a partnership deal with a company that comes to my mind immediately. We were discussing the partnership. I came from the big company in that case. We were discussing this partnership for weeks and weeks and weeks. We did a lot of agreements. We came to many, many points. And then the company owner, the founder, came to the negotiation after 5-6 weeks. And after 5 minutes, I realized all the discussions, all the agreements I can put in the bin. Absolutely nothing counts. And I realized it only by seeing the atmosphere in the room, because all the senior people in the room from that company, it was an amazing company in Eastern Europe, all the senior people from that company shut up and only the founder talked. And he was not informed about our agreements before, and he said, we do it this and that way. And there was no discussion. We have to do it that and that way. So that was a hard point in the negotiation that I said, all my negotiation before doesn't count. I start the negotiation again. And then came the second point. He said, once you acquire me, I'm out. And this is what I then didn't expect. So this company depended 100% on his word, depended 100% on his culture, depended 100% on his contacts, because he started the company and he was the only decision maker. And I said, I'm fine to start the negotiation process again. I'm not fine to lose you once we have the partnership, because your business is you as a person. If I lose you, I lose your business. So why should I go in the partnership? So these are a couple of questions.
Okay,
please.
I'll recap that. ครับก็ในเรื่องของการ JV กันเป็นเรื่องสำคัญโดยเฉพาะถ้าเกิดเป็นเรื่องของการเข้ามาถือหุ้นเนาะนะฮะซึ่งตามหลักแล้วเนี่ยถ้าเกิดเป็นบริษัทข้ามชาติใหญ่ๆเนี่ยเข้ามาเนี่ยเขาก็มักอยากที่จะถือ51นะฮะแต่เราก็รู้ว่าของบ้านเราเนาะยังไงก็กฎหมายไทยเราก็คือตรง51เพราะฉะนั้นมันก็ต้องมีเวในการที่จะทำงานร่วมกันนะครับสำคัญอีกอันหนึ่งก็คือว่าจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยเวลา negotiate กันเนี่ยใครเป็นผู้มีอำนาจตัดสินใจนะครับบางอย่างที่คุณเทซี่บอกเมื่อกี้นะฮะเคยเข้าไปคุยกับบริษัทหนึ่งที่ยุโรปตะวันออกนะฮะคุยมาตั้งเยอะแล้วโอ้โหประชุมกันมาหลายรอบปรากฏว่าพอเข้าไปจริงๆเจอผู้ก่อตั้งมาถึงบอกไม่เอาไอ้ที่ไปลูกจ๊อกทั้งหลายไปคุยนี่ไม่เอาอย่างนี้นะครับก็ต้องเริ่มคุยกันใหม่นะแต่ที่สำคัญอีกอย่างหนึ่งก็คือว่าเสร็จแล้วเนี่ยพอซื้อกิจการแล้วเนี่ยผู้บริหารเดิมว่ายังไงนะครับผู้บริหารเดิมยังอยากจะทำงานบริหารต่อไหมนะครับหรือว่าอยากจะขายแล้วก็เลิกแล้วไปอยู่ภูเก็ตล่องเรือยอชท์ทั้งวันทั้งคืนหรือตีกอล์ฟอะไรหรือเปล่านะฮะซึ่งในแง่ของผู้ซื้อเนี่ยจริงๆบางทีเขาบอกว่าเขายังต้องการให้ผู้บริหารเดิมเนี่ยที่ทำงานมาได้ดีจนกระทั่งมันน่าสนใจน่าซื้อแล้วแสดงว่าเขาต้องเก่งเนาะนะอยากจะให้ยังคอนเทนต์อยู่ยังทำงานในการที่จะร่วมจอยกันต่อไปนะครับมันก็มีหลายเรื่องที่ต้องคิดนะครับเวลาจะซื้อจะขายกัน
Thank you very much. So these were the introduction and the deep dive. That is all my perspective and my experience. We come now to the third session. Nino, a friend who lived here in Bangkok for many years. I think you all know him, so I don't need to introduce you. Now from Singapore, kindly was flying in from Singapore. Gives you another twist, maybe another perspective on the partnership models by sharing your experience. So thanks for being here, Nino.
ครับคุณนีโน่นะครับเป็น CEO ของ Tarsus Asia ครับ
Cheers. Thank you. สวัสดีครับ I'd like to comment first before I jump into the slides on something that you mentioned earlier, Tezi, where I slightly disagree. I don't think there are really hidden agendas in the partnership or acquisition models. It's just there are surprises because things have not been discussed, and they may later, when they hit you, make you feel like, wow, why was this never mentioned? But I think in the process of negotiating any partnership, every question should be asked before you sign on the dotted line to avoid surprises which may seem like later on hidden agendas. So I think if you do a proper negotiation, a proper process of finding your partner and choosing your partner, there should not be any hidden agendas or surprises. The reason why companies do joint ventures are very different, but often there are, let's say, 3-4 items, I would say, that international organizers want to accomplish without anything hidden. But I'll jump into that. On that note, though, I think if you feel there is a hidden agenda or in order to avoid surprises, I think it is really, really important to bring everything on the table prior. And as you have never sold your company before, or this might be your first joint venture, I think you should talk to your peers. You should talk to Kun Pricha and say, hey, Kun Pricha, what have you done well? How did you sell to Reed? And what would you do different today? If you could, go back in time, you could talk to Kun Kawin and say, hey, how was it selling your company and then buying it back? What were the things you didn't know in advance? What would be the things you would do differently next time? So learn from the peers who have gone through the process, who were caught off guard by often small little things, such as I used to have a company car and now the new partner doesn't allow me to have a company car. That's not a hidden agenda, that's just, we never talked about that. And now
Can I clarify
hurts you.
something, Nino?
Huh?
Actually, I didn't mean a hidden agenda, just to clarify it. I talked about different motivations and not hidden agendas.
Yeah.
So there are different motivations, and that's totally fine. And I totally agree with you. Bring the question on the table and discuss it. Yeah, absolutely.
And
right.
talk to your peers. Like, either hire a broker who helps you, who represents you, or talk to people who have gone through the process, good and bad. So learn from the people who have gone through it. But now let me share a few examples on different ways of how to work with a partner. And you have everything. The barter is the easiest. I give you a booth at my show and vice versa, and we just call it quits. So all the way to the very end, I want to sell my company to someone, or I want to buy your company. And we have so many models in between the show management. Hey, I come as Tarsus to Thailand, and please, I pay you $20,000 if you run the shows for me, the local operations and all of that. The three examples I want to spend a bit more time on to prepare you is the project joint venture, the show acquisition, and the company acquisition. And I just want to give you a few highlights of what I suggest you think of when you go into the negotiation with a potential partner. And the way I conceptualize when I hire people or when I look into companies is the 3 Ps. So think of the P&L, the profits, the budgeting and all that. Think of the product, the show, the database, the brand, the verticals that you are operating in, the competition and all that. And the people, who is the show management, who are the stronger salespeople, who are the agents and whatnot. So that is sort of my framework, how I would approach it. And the first example I want to give you is a project joint ventures. So 2 organizers say, let's launch a show together. In the case that Panada probably mentioned, or DLG earlier, when I was at VNU, I said, DLG, which is a German organizer, why don't we jointly launch a show in Bangkok? Based on the assumption that we make a profit, we just share the profits 50-50, the gross profits. So we do not include our overheads and salaries and so forth. Why? I'll explain in a second. So if those 2 companies say, let's launch a show together, let me give you a few examples of how I would try to make you aware on the things you should keep in mind and negotiate and agree on before you sign on the dotted line. Simple things in terms of P&L is, how is the revenue made up? So let us sit down for this new launch and say, how much are we selling the show for? In Germany, you charge 150 euro or US dollars. How much are we going to charge here? Because the average price in Thailand for international shows is maybe $250, $300. So do we go with a German pricing, or do we double it because we go with the Asian pricing? All things you should discuss before you sign on the dotted line. What is your commission structure? Do you have agents? Do you pay them 10, 20, 30, 50% commission? How much do I pay my agents? Do I have agents? And a big point of contention is also discounts. Let's sit down and have a negotiation and a discussion and an agreement. How many % of discounts am I allowed to give certain customers? One school of thought says, well, this is my bellwether. He's really important, so I may give him the space for free, because once I have him secured, the other ones will sign up too. And the other school of thought is saying, no. Like, a discount means I'm selling my show for cheap. If people really want to come, they should pay the full price. Or maybe they get an early bird discount. There is no right or wrong. It's just important that you sit down with your partner and discuss and agree on that before you make the big announcement that you are launching the show. Another one is, as we're just basing this on the gross profit sharing, is travel. So imagine I'm still with VNU and I talk to DLG and I say, what is our travel policy for this joint venture? Because travel costs, of course, will be part of your P&L. Well, what if the German travel policy says everyone always flies business class? And the local policy is we fly Air Asia, the cheapest flight possible. Well, it would be unfair then to us here in Bangkok if they charge $5,000 for each flight and we charge maybe 2,000 baht for each flight, and we put this in the P&L. Again, there is no right or wrong. Just make sure you address all these topics prior. What is the travel policy? Do we stay at 5-star hotels? Do we get allowances? What can be put in the budget and what cannot be put in the budget? Marketing, I'll come with a specific example later. And the final one is maybe forecasting or spending. So you set up a budget, which you can all agree, but then what if sales are slow? At what point do we review our budget? Maybe cut the revenue because it's not realistic that we hit our target. And consequently, what does that mean if we have to cut costs? Do we then say there's a process for that? Do we say we first start by saving money on the carpeting or we don't travel anymore? Those are all things I think you should anticipate and walk through those scenarios before you make the announcement.
คุณนิโน่ let me jump in a little bit ครับก็คุณนิโน่คิดว่ามีจริงๆวิธีการในการที่จะแบบมี relationship กับต่างชาติที่มีหลายแบบนะแต่คิดว่า3เรื่องที่น่าจะสำคัญก็คือการจอยกัน launch งานนะครับอย่างลักษณะนี้นะอันที่2ก็คือการที่ต่างชาติต้องการมาซื้องานเราหรือซื้อเกิดส่วนในงานเราอันที่3ก็คือมาซื้อบริษัทเรานะครับแบบแรกก็คือในเรื่องของ joint venture ของโปรเจกต์นะนั่นก็คือบริษัท A บริษัท B launch งานร่วมกันนะครับมีหลายเรื่องที่ต้องคิดนอกจากแผนเผินอะไรทั้งหลายเนี่ยนะว่าจะทำอะไรยังไงกันเนี่ยนะครับก็คือว่าเรื่องของรายได้ขายราคาใครนะผมขายอยู่ที่ยุโรปผมขายราคานี้อีกบริษัทอยู่ไทยบอกว่าปกติเราขายราคานี้ตกลงกันเรื่องราคาก่อนนะในเรื่องของ currency ก็สำคัญจะเอา US ดอลลาร์จะเอาไทยบาทจะเอาอะไรยังไงเพราะมันมีผลต่อในเรื่องของ exchange rate ด้วย at the end เวลาเรา reconcile หรือว่าเราเทียบบัญชีกันนะครับเรื่องของ commission ปกติเรามี sales agent ไหมเราจ่าย sales agent เท่าไหร่ของเขามี sales agent มันมีทับซ้อนกันไหมนะครับในบางตลาดหรือว่าเป็นตลาดต่างประเทศนะนี่ก็ต้องคุยกันนะครับเรื่องของอันนี้สำคัญมากเลยนะครับฝรั่งไม่แฮปปี้เลยส่วนมากบอกตรงๆกับวิธีการที่เราให้ discount นะครับเรานี่แบบให้ discount แบบไฟจะไหม้ละ 30% กูก็ลดวะอะไรอย่างเงี้ยนะฝรั่งนี้ไม่ได้เลยนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยมันจะต้องมีนโยบายในการให้ส่วนลดนะครับหรือว่าลักษณะอย่างนี้ถึงจะได้ส่วนลดเท่านั้นเท่านี้คุยกันให้เรียบร้อยนะครับในเรื่องของcost of sale นะฮะก็สำคัญนะครับอันนี้ขำดีผมเคยทำงานหนึ่งนะฮะออกมากำไรแล้วเราดีใจมากเลยโหกำไรแบบออกมากำไรแบบพอสมควรฝรั่งบอกอ๋อพอดีของไอเนี่ย president บิน first class ทุกคนอื่นๆบิน business หมดและนี่คือคอสทั้งหมดออกมามันบินกัน 3-4 ล้านมันนอนกันโรงแรม5 ดาวเสมอมันมาถึงเมืองไทยเราก็แบบโอ้โหมันนอนแบบอินเตอร์คอนไฮยัตอะไรอย่างงี้นะส่วนเรานี่นะฮะนิสัยคนไทยเนาะเราไปโปรโมทที่เวียดนามเราก็บินแอร์เอเชียอย่างคุณนีโน่ว่านะฮะนอนเราก็นอนโรงแรม3 ดาวนะครับนั่งเราก็นั่งแท็กซี่เขานั่งลิมูซีนตลอดออกมาใครเป็นขาดทุนอะไรอย่างนี้เป็นต้นนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเป็นเรื่องที่ต้องทำเรื่อง forecast และ spending ถ้าเกิดว่าเริ่มดูแล้วเฮ้ยรายได้ไปไม่ถึงคาดการณ์เราจะตัดงบตัดอะไรยังไงอันนี้ก็ต้อง agree กันโอเคคุณนีโน่
The next one is, here an example on the P&L part. So often what joint ventures would do is to agree on a budget. Like, let's assume we launch the show, we think we can make $1 million revenue, this is how much we spend on travel, marketing, venue construction, and then this is what we assume, forecast is our gross profit. And that is often where people stop. And then they sign, they make the announcement, and then they realize, well, what we never really discussed was who gets to spend how much of that allocated budget. And I think what is important in the negotiation is to understand who spends how much. How much revenue does the partner bring in, expected, and how much does the local come in? More importantly, travel and marketing. Well, yes, it's fine to say we're going to spend $100,000 on marketing, But then if you reconsolidate and you realize, well, you spend 100,000, what? I spend 100,000. Now we're 200,000 that we spend on marketing. So make sure that you agree on who gets to spend how much. The marketing, for example, if it's a show in Bangkok, you need more local marketing. It doesn't make sense really to have an ad in the US, but it probably makes more sense to have an ad in Cambodia, Malaysia, and Indonesia for the show in Bangkok. Construction, there's a typo there. Of course, the local partner needs to pay for the NCC Image or the Picos and Kingsmans and whatnot. So make sure you also break it down, who gets to spend how much, and maybe even a third column by when do we get to spend that. So marketing, for example, if we spend all the marketing in the first week, and then we realize our budget is not being hit because the revenue is slower than expected, we cannot save on marketing. So maybe you can also split that and say, okay, first, both partners get to spend 50% of what we have here, and then 6 months before the show, we review whether we release the second part of the budget. Else, you may limit yourself in where you can save money if the revenue doesn't come in.
Let me just recap that a little bit. นอกจากนะฮะสิ่งสำคัญก็คือต้องทำ master budget ร่วมกันนะครับซึ่งมันก็จะลงว่าเป็นค่าเราคาดว่ารายได้เท่าไหร่นะครับ spending ในหัวข้อใหญ่ๆเท่าไหร่บ้างแต่สำคัญกว่านั้นคือเราต้องบอกเลยว่าแล้วใคร spend เท่าไหร่ spend ได้เท่าไหร่ใคร spend ได้เท่าไหร่นะฮะไม่อย่างนั้นเนี่ยตอนสุดท้ายอาจจะออกมาว่าอ้าวฉันไม่รู้นี่ฉันใช้ไป100,000 เหรียญเหมือนกันกลายเป็นว่าเกินบัดเจ็ตที่เซตไว้นะครับอย่างเช่นอีกอย่างหนึ่งนะฮะอันนี้จากประสบการณ์นะครับก็จะบอกว่าบางทีเนี่ยจะเห็นว่าคอสของเราเนี่ยในบางเรื่องเนี่ยมันมาตกหนักกับ local partner นะครับเพราะเราเป็นคนออกค่าบูธนะฮะการก่อสร้างนะครับกับคอนแทคเตอร์เราเป็นคนจ่ายค่าเช่านะฮะเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยบางทีเนี่ยเงินเราออกเยอะกว่าฝรั่งอีกนะเพราะฝรั่งเขาพูดง่ายๆคือเขาแค่ทำมาร์เก็ตติ้งกับขายเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยอย่างหนึ่งที่ผมจะแนะนำก็คือในสัญญาเนี่ยคือต้องบอกด้วยว่าในพวกอย่างเงี้ยพวก capital expenditure พวกเนี้ยฝรั่งต้องโอนเงินมาให้เราก่อนด้วยไม่งั้นกลายเป็นว่าเรารับผิดชอบเนื่องฮะ cash flow เราหนักอยู่ฝ่ายเดียวกว่าที่จะตอนจบหรือ reconcile กันแล้วเงินจะมาโอเคคืนนี้
The next aspect for launching a show together, things you should think about is everything that relates around the product. We launch a show, Agritechnica Asia, we launch a show, whatever we call it. Who owns the intellectual property, the brand? Is it jointly owned or is it brought in by the international partner? What about the database? Now, if you have an international partner, they may have Reed Travel Portfolio has probably 20 shows worldwide. They're not going to give you a copy of that database for your new launch in Bangkok. So how do you make sure how to transition database from, if you're the local organizer or the international one, what gets thrown into the pod? And vice versa, something you should also bear in mind at the end is, what if the joint venture doesn't work out? Who takes what out of the joint venture when things don't work out? So who gets to keep the IP? Is there a non-compete in place? No, both organizers cannot continue to run a show for 2 or 3 years? Or do you say, if things don't work, we take our IP back to Germany, but you can run a local show in the same vertical, just don't use the brand name that we gave you? What happens to the database? Am I allowed, if I launch the show here in Bangkok together, am I allowed to use this database for a show in Vietnam? Very unlikely that the international partner would allow you to do that. But what if I want to use that database for my show back in Germany or in China or in Brazil? Those are all things you should consider as part of the product. Sales territory, Tezi has mentioned earlier, operations and marketing, I think that is quite obvious that you should agree on those points. But in terms of product, I think the two things that should be discussed in detail is the IP and the database, as well as what happens if things do not work out, and the non-compete.
เรื่องสำคัญนะฮะนอกจากเรื่องของแผนปกติทั่วไปแล้วเนี่ยครับก็สิ่งที่ซึ่งบางทีเราอาจจะไม่คนไทยเราไม่ค่อยได้คิดก็คือเรื่องของทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาหรือแบรนด์ของงานนะครับใครเป็นเจ้าของร่วมกันหรือว่าเราเอาแบรนด์จากเมืองนอกมานะครับมันมีมูลค่าเป็นเปอร์เซ็นต์เท่าไหร่นะครับอีกอันหนึ่งที่เรื่องที่น่าสำคัญมากผมจะบอกเลยว่า ก่อนที่คิดจะทำงานกับฝรั่งเนี่ยไปจัดหลังบ้านอยู่2 เรื่อง1คือเรื่องบัญชี2คือเรื่องดัตเตอร์เบสนะฮะเพราะฝรั่งมานี่เขาอยากจะรู้มากๆเลยดัตเตอร์เบสเราเป็นยังไงแล้วดัตเตอร์เบสเราเนี่ยมันจะใช้ยังไงได้บางทีเราคิดว่าจอยกับฝรั่งจะเอาดัตเตอร์เบสของเขามาซึ่งเขามีบอกเขามี300,000โอเคเขามี300,000จริงแต่ได้คุยกันไหมว่าเขาจะให้เรามาเท่าไหร่แล้วดัตเตอร์เบสของเราเนี่ยมันใช้ได้มากน้อยแค่ไหนนะครับเรื่องดัตเตอร์เบสเนี่ยเป็นจุดที่ต้องคุยกันดีๆว่า expectation ของทั้ง2 ฝ่ายเนี่ยเป็นยังไงบ้างหรือเราจะมีโอกาสในการใช้ดัตเตอร์เบสของเขาซึ่งใหญ่กว่าเนี่ยอย่างไรบ้างในการโปรโมทในต่างประเทศนะครับเรื่องของแล้วนอกจากนั้นเนี่ยที่สำคัญก็คือว่าแล้วถ้าเกิดว่าเลิกกันล่ะถ้ามันไปเรื่อยๆแล้วมันเวิร์กก็ดีเนาะแต่ถ้าเกิดว่าเกิดจบแล้วนะฮะในเรื่องของ IP นะครับกับเรื่อง Database เนี่ยจะแบ่งกลับยังไงหรือว่าจะมีอะไรที่มาควบคุมนะครับแล้วก็ในเรื่องของ non compete อาจจะมีไหมว่าจากนี้ไปพอเลิกกันแล้วเนี่ยทั้ง2 บริษัทห้ามจัดงานลักษณะเดียวกันไปอีก2 ปีแล้วค่อยมาว่ากันใหม่หรืออย่างไรแล้วแต่เป็นสัญญาที่ต้องคิดไว้เรื่องต้นไม่ได้คิดแต่เรื่องดีแต่แล้วต้องคิดถึงตอนจบด้วยโอเคก็ดี
And the final part is people. So you should agree on who is running the project for us. So often it's the, let's say, MDs or vice presidents that negotiate that, but we're not the ones doing the work. So make sure you agree on who is part of the core team, which full-time or part-time employees are part of the core team. And it is important also to then understand if you have an international partner that launches a show with you here, that they have a dedicated project manager or head of sales, someone who is 100% dedicated to the show, not someone who runs the big show in Germany and on the side does the new launch here. And vice versa, you should also put your best person forward to make sure that this launch is a success, because that will then help you to launch more joint ventures with other companies. Another part about people is, what if we have a disagreement on budget cuts, on discounts? Like, if we cannot find agreement, how do we resolve it? Is it one time you make the decision, one time I make it? Do we by default always choose the cheapest option, or do we choose by default what's better for the customer, and those things? And a final point is, just make sure you also agree on how often do we communicate. Is there a weekly sales report? Is there a monthly call? How often and when do we communicate?
ครับแน่นอนนะอีกเรื่องที่สำคัญมากคือเรื่องของทีมงานนะครับก็คือใครในแต่ละปกติเวลาดีลกันนะก็จะเป็นเจ้าของต่อเจ้าของหรือว่าเจ้าของกับ Business Development Director หรือ VP นะครับแต่ว่าคนทำงานจริงๆของทั้งสองฝ่ายเป็นยังไงนะบอกตามตรงว่าฝั่งไทยเราเนี่ยสิ่งที่มักจะเกิดขึ้นคือฝรั่งที่มาทำหน้าที่ในการคุยเรื่อง JV โน่นนั่นนี่เนี่ยโหย enthusiastic มากบอกไอ้โน่นก็ได้ไอ้นี่ก็ได้ไอ้นั่นก็ได้แต่พอจบแล้วไอ้คนนั้นหน้าที่เขาได้ KPI แล้วตบมือไปนะฮะเรียบร้อยไอ้คนที่ต้องมาทำงานกับเราไม่ได้อยากทำงานที่ยุโรปก็เหนื่อยจะเป่งเลยฮะต้องมานี่กับเมืองไทยเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยมันก็ต้อง make sure ว่าตัวทีมนะครับของฝั่งเขาเนี่ยนะฝรั่งไม่ได้เก่งกว่าเรานะฝรั่งก็ไม่ได้ฉลาดกว่าเราไม่ได้มี5 มือนะครับจริงก็เหมือนกันนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยก็ต้องดูว่ามันฝั่งโน้นเนี่ยเราก็ต้อง make sure เหมือนกันว่าฝั่งโน้นเนี่ยแบบส่งคนที่แบบ work มาทำงานกับเราฝั่งเราก็เหมือนกันเราก็ต้องใช้คนที่เก่งที่สุดนะครับไปทำเรื่องของสมมติว่าเกิดมี disagreement นะครับจะใช้หลักการโดยทั่วไปยังไงในการที่จะหารือกันแล้วก็หาโซลูชันที่ดีที่สุดคำตอบคือโซลูชันที่ถูกที่สุดไหมหรือโซลูชันที่ดีที่สุดสำหรับexhibitor หรือแบบไหนคือมันต้องมีคุยกันไปคร่าวๆหรือว่าแล้วในนั้นเนี่ยจะมีบอร์ดกี่คนแล้วบอร์ดจะหรือว่าวิธีการในการที่จะตัดสินในเรื่องของ disagreement นะครับแล้วก็แน่นอนก็คือในเรื่องของ reporting การสื่อสารนะครับการสื่อสารระหว่างทีมงานต้องมี weekly meeting ไหมหรือว่าอะไรยังไงแล้วก็ reporting สำหรับทั้งสองผู้ใหญ่ทั้งสองฝั่งมีข้อมูลอะไรบ้างแล้ว report บ่อยแค่ไหนใครต้องทำบ้าง
Let's move on to the next example, which is an acquisition. So another company wants to buy one of your assets, which in our case, in our industry, is one of your trade shows. So I want to buy 100% of your show. So I could go to Kunpanada and say, I want to buy Thailand Lab, Or as I did with SingX, an organizer in Singapore, I said, I want to buy your tire exhibition. So they have a portfolio of shows, and I say, this one specific show, I would love to buy from you, which is different to what we discussed earlier, buying the entire company with all the shows. And the thing is, in our industry, we don't have a lot of IP. Basically, if I buy Tire Expo from SingX or Thailand Lab from VNU, all I pretty much buy is a spreadsheet full of data, the website, and maybe the logo. Those are pretty much the things that I pay for. Of course, I also get the team as part of it, but the team is not secured forever. The website I can own for 5, 10, 20 eternity, but the team, the person could just resign the next day. And then all I have as an asset in a way is the database, the website, and maybe a bit of the IP. So if I want to buy that, the things, again, P&L I should look for is do the due diligence, make sure that if you acquire an asset that you find out who owns the IP. Is it protected internationally or only for Thailand or for ASEAN? Check the database. Someone says, I have 10,000 contacts in the tire industry. Well, what does a contact mean? Is it just the name from the registration? Is it an email? Is the email verified, or did someone just say johndoe@gmail.com and the email doesn't really work? So make sure you check all these things before you purchase that particular asset. Another thing, as I mentioned previously, is the non-compete. So if I buy the tire show, I want to make sure that Singapore Expo or Constella doesn't continue to run a tire show for the next 5 years, or at least not in Southeast Asia, and so forth. And then an important part is the novation. So let's assume I buy Thailand Lab. Thailand Lab has already existing business, customers signed up for the show. But when I announce that now Nino owns the show instead of Kun Panada, maybe some exhibitors say, whoa, that's not what I want. I didn't sign up with Nino, I signed up with Panada. I want to step back from my contract that I signed for 36 square meters. So novation means that you send an email to all the exhibitors and say, please sign here that your contract, which was with Panada, gets converted to a contract with Nino. And in the best case, 100% of the exhibitor says yes, and then I pay Panada based on those novated contracts. But maybe 50% of the customers say, oh, that's a good time for me to say, no, I don't want this, I want my money back, or I'm not coming to the show, which of course then makes us renegotiate how much am I paying her. 50% of the customers use that to exit the show. And the final part, of course, is the staffing. So when I acquired Tire Expo from Constellar SingX, then I asked them, which is very important that in either way, seller or buyer, you bear this in mind. I asked them, hey, if I acquire this show, would it be okay if I make an offer to the project leader or to the head of sales? Or would you find this as threatening because you have an idea on what else they could run for you? And they said, no, in this case, we're happy if you take over the team as well. In other cases, you might say, no, this person is really good and he's running 3 other projects. Do not make an offer for this person for the next 2 years, for example. So that's also important to bear in mind, the staffing. And we need to speed up a little bit.
ครับก็คือว่าเรื่องของการประเมินทางธุรกิจนั่นคือ due diligence จะมีรายละเอียดเพิ่มเติมนะครับเรื่อง IP database อย่างที่ผมบอกนะฮะทางฝรั่งนี่เขาจะมาดูจริงๆว่า database ที่เรามีเนี่ยมันดีแค่ไหนชื่อนามสกุลอีเมลโดยโทรศัพท์โน่นนั่นนี่แล้วมันอัปเดตไหมนะครับไม่ใช่มีแค่ชื่อคนแล้วก็ตามนั้น non compete ก็เป็นเรื่องสำคัญนะครับเมื่อจอยกันแล้วนะครับหรือซื้อแล้วเนี่ยบริษัทที่ขายเนี่ยอาจจะต้องถูกห้ามที่จะรันโชว์ที่จะคอมพีทคือแบบมาเป็นคู่แข่งได้เป็นระยะเวลากี่ปีนะครับเรื่องต่อไปก็คือ innovation ก็คือความต่อเนื่องของสัญญานะครับถ้าเกิดว่าเป็นผู้ที่เขามาซื้อนะฮะลูกค้าของคนขายอาจจะบอกเฮ้ยไม่ได้อยากจะทำงานกับฝรั่งจริงๆอยากจะทำงานกับเมืองไทยเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยผู้ที่จะขายให้เนี่ยก็ต้องสามารถที่จะ deliver ให้ไปถึงตัวธุรกิจอันนี้หรือ exhibitor ทั้งหลายเนี่ยต่อกับฝรั่งได้นะครับแล้วก็ staffing ก็คือเรื่องของพนักงานเพราะว่าพอซื้องานไปแล้วนะครับทางต่างชาติอาจจะบอกผมอยากจะขอ approach คุณมาร์คซึ่งเป็น project manager จ้างไปทำงานด้วยได้ไหมอะไรอย่างนี้ต้องเป็นเรื่องที่คุยกันต่อเนื่องโอเค
The final part is the acquisition. I want to buy 51% of your company, or I want to invest into your company, and I want us to jointly run the show or the company together in the future. That is the third example. Now, bear in mind, and I'll come back to that in the afternoon session, is if someone is willing to invest in your company, they have the company's best interest at heart. Now, you may disagree, or you may find, oh, I would have expected them to contribute more to it. But nobody buys into your company to destroy your company, as a rule of thumb. So the things you should discuss, and that's what I said earlier, there shouldn't be hidden agendas or surprises, are these things. So I think when you sell your company, one part is you should think of continuation. How is the budgeting process being done in the future? Is it just the international company saying, this is the budget for next year, or is there a negotiation? How often do we have board meetings, and how do we make decisions? Can it be virtually, email? I have some companies where it's very strict and there's an exact timeline how often we have board meetings. Others, I haven't had a board meeting, an official one, for 3 years because we do everything via WhatsApp and non-verbally. Just make sure you agree to that. Cost reduction. There are benefits having an international partner who can say, hey, I looked at, during due diligence, I saw that you pay more in the venue than we do because we're a bigger organizer. We are Informa and we get big discounts from the venue. So once we are your partner, you can actually lower your venue cost. We can help with floor planning, example I show you a little bit later. We have central full-time employees or overhead. We can help you with all these things that we mentioned before, Matthias, Tesi, that we can help you with. I just want to give you one example. Apart from someone is paying you to invest in your company, there are operational things they can share with you, things that you have never thought of, or because you have only worked in one company, you never learned about that. So one example is, this is a show Tarsus acquired in Manila in the Philippines, Vofex, a food show like Anuga Taifex. And this show has been successfully running for 20 years, largest show in the Philippines in terms of food. Yet, if you take a closer look, you see there is someone selling a steamer, and next to it is a beverage or a tea company. Here you have someone selling food equipment, and next to it you see Dilma Tea. Those are not related. Here you see someone selling weigh scales, and next to it is a tortilla company. So even though that show was successful and we acquired that, there were certain things we could show them in terms of how to optimize your operations. The exhibitor list was in alphabetical order, but I don't come often as a buyer to a show to look for a company by name, but a particular segment. So what we did is we said, this is your old floor plan, and I think there is a better way. That was 2018, I think, 2018. And then we said, let's optimize your floor plan and put a central aisle in there. Let's have particular segments so the buyers know where to find what product. If they look for steamers, they look in one section. If they look for tortilla chips, they should all be clustered in a separate area. So simple things, a successful show, to give all the credit to the guys, but there are small little tweaks on agents, on optimization of floor plans that your partner can help you with.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Nino. Great to see. No.
Oh,
you need to stay here for 1 second. Great to see all your experience. Yeah, please. Anybody a question for Nino? Yes, please.
So I saw, based on some of your presentation about the sharing profits, the number is like 50-50 is real number, or it's just for the case study, or the number of the split of the net profit, for example? What is the rationale behind that? For example, is it the reputation of the local partner, or what would you guys come up with the number of that?
Often, in my experience, you start with a 50-50. It is the fairest, as we don't know whether this thing is successful, whether most exhibitors would come from overseas or from the region where the local company is selling. So to not feel there is a majority and a minority partner, you would say, let's just start with a 50-50. Now, it could be that you have an agreement, or as part of the agreement, that you say, after 3 years or 5 years, we review this. Or you could say, if the revenue contribution has a delta of, I don't know, 80%, so one company brings 80% of the revenue and the other only 20, that would favor the profit sharing as an advantage for the guy that brings in more revenue. Those provisions you could put in, but I would always say for the project joint venture, start with a 50-50 and take it from there. So those are real numbers. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And also good news is originally Nino was meant to be guest speaker for 1 session, and then I called him and said, sorry, you need to be guest speaker for 2 sessions, which means he will be here in the coffee break. And if you have further questions, grab him and arrest him and ask him all the questions you might have. So thank you very much,
welcome.
Nino. Thank you very much. So first session is done. We move now in the coffee break.